Hello, my friends. It's Indiana Holmes again for story time. We continue tonight with the Agatha Christie novel, The Seven Dials Mystery, and we begin with Chapter 13, The Seven Dials Club. Bundle reached 14 Hunstanton Street about 6 p.m. At that hour, as she rightly judged, the Seven Dials Club was a dead spot. Bundle's aim was a simple one. She intended to get hold of the ex-footman Alfred. She was convinced that once she had got hold of him, the rest would be easy. Bundle had a simple, autocratic method of dealing with retainers. It seldom failed, and she saw no reason why it should fail now. The only thing of which she was not certain was how many people inhabited the club premises. Naturally, she wished to disclose her presence to as few people as possible. Whilst she was hesitating as to her best line of attack, the problem was solved for her in a singularly easy fashion. The door of number 14 opened, and Alfred himself came out. "Good afternoon, Alfred," said Bundle pleasantly. Alfred jumped up. "Oh, good afternoon, your ladyship. I didn't recognize your ladyship just for a moment." Paying a tribute in her own mind to her maid's clothing, Bundle proceeded to business. "I want a few words with you, Alfred. Where shall we go?" "Well, really, my lady, I don't know. It's not what you might call a nice part round here. I don't know, I'm sure." Bundle cut him short. "Who's in the club?" "No one at present, my lady." "Then we'll go in there." Alfred produced a key and opened the door. Bundle passed in. Alfred, troubled and sheepish, followed her. Bundle sat down and looked straight at the uncomfortable Alfred. "I suppose you know," she said crisply, "that what you're doing here is dead against the law." Alfred shifted uncomfortably from one foot to the other. "It's true, as we've been raided twice," he admitted, "but nothing compromising was found, owing to the neatness of Mr. Mozogorovsky's arrangements." "I'm not talking of the gambling only," said Bundle. "There's more than that, probably a great deal more than you know. I'm going to ask you a direct question, Alfred, and I should like the truth, please. How much were you paid for leaving Chimneys?" Alfred looked twice around the cornice as though seeking for inspirations, swallowed 3 or 4 times, and then took the inevitable course of a weak will opposed to a strong one. "It was this way, your ladyship. Mr. Mozogorovsky, he came with a party to visit Chimneys on one of the show days. Mr. Treadwell, he was indisposed like, an ingrowing toenail as a matter of fact, so it fell to me to show the parties over. At the end of the tour, Mr. Mozogorovsky, he stays behind the rest, and after giving me something handsome, he falls into conversation." "Yes," said Bundle encouragingly. "And the long and the short of it was," said Alfred, with a sudden acceleration of his narrative, "that he offers me £100 down to leave that instant minute, and to look after this here club. He wanted someone as was used to the best families, to give the place a tone, as he put it, and, well, it seemed flying in the face of Providence to refuse, let alone that the wages I get here are just 3 times what they were as a second footman." £100, said Bundle. "That's a very large sum, Alfred. Did they say anything about who was to fill your place at Chimneys?" I demurred a bit, my lady, about leaving at once. As I pointed out, it wasn't usual and might cause inconvenience, but Mr. Mozogorovsky, he knew of a young chap, been in good service and ready to come any minute, so I mentioned his name to Mr. Treadwell, and everything was settled pleasant-like. Bundle nodded. Her own suspicions had been correct, and the modus operandi was much as she had thought it to be. She essayed a further inquiry. "Who is Mr. Mozogorovsky?" "Gentleman as runs this club. Russian gentleman. A very clever gentleman, too." Bundle abandoned the getting of information for the moment, and proceeded to other matters. £100 is a very large sum of money, Alfred. Larger than I ever handled, my lady, said Alfred with a simple candor. Did you never suspect that there was something wrong? Wrong, milady? Yes, I'm not talking about the gambling. I mean something far more serious. You don't want to be sent to the penal servitude, do you, Alfred? Oh, Lord, milady, you don't mean it. I was at Scotland Yard the day before yesterday, said Bundle impressively. I heard some very curious things. I want you to help me, Alfred. And if you do, well, if things go wrong, I'll put in a good word for you. Anything I can do, I shall be only too pleased, my lady. I mean, I would anyway. Well, first, said Bundle, I want to go all over this place, from top to bottom. Accompanied by a mystified and scared Alfred, she made a very thorough tour of inspection. Nothing struck her eye till she came to the gaming room. There she noted an inconspicuous door in the corner, and the door was locked. Alfred explained readily. That's used as a getaway, your ladyship. There's a room and a door onto a staircase what comes out in the next street. That's the way the gentry goes when there's a raid. But don't the police know about it? It's a cunning door, you see, milady. Looks like a cupboard, that's all. Bundle felt a rising excitement. I must get in there, she said. Alfred shook his head. You can't, milady. Mr. Magrovsky's, he has the key. Well, said Bundle, there are other keys. She perceived that the lock was a perfectly ordinary one, which probably could easily be unlocked by the key of one of the other doors. Alfred, rather troubled, was sent to collect likely specimens. The fourth that Bundle tried fitted. She turned it, opened the door, and passed through. She found herself in a small, dingy apartment. A long table occupied the center of the room, with chairs ranged round it. There was no other furniture in the room. Two built-in cupboards stood on either side of the fireplace. Alfred indicated the nearer one with a nod. That's it, he explained. Bundle tried the cupboard door, but it was locked, and she saw at once that this lock was a very different affair. It was of the patent kind that would only yield to its own key. Highly ingenious it is, explained Alfred. It looks all right when opened. Shelves, you know, with a few ledgers and that on 'em. Nobody ever suspect. But you touch the right spot and the whole thing swings open. Bundle had turned around and was surveying the room thoughtfully. The first thing she noticed was that the door by which they had entered was carefully fitted round with a baize. It must be completely soundproof. Then her eyes wandered to the chairs. There were 7 of them, 3 each side, and one rather more imposing in design at the head of the table. Bundle's eyes brightened. She had found what she was looking for. This, she felt for sure, was the meeting place of that secret organization. The place was almost perfectly planned. It looked so innocent. You could reach it just by stepping through the gaming room. Or you could arrive there by the secret entrance, and any secrecy, any precautions, were easily explained by going gaming on in the next room. Idly, as these thoughts passed through her mind, she drew a finger across the marble of the mantelpiece. Alfred saw this and misinterpreted the action. You won't find no dirt, not to speak of, he said. Mr. Magrovsky, he ordered the place to be swept out this morning, and I did it while he waited. Oh, said Bundle, thinking very hard. This morning, eh? Has to be done sometimes, said Alfred, though the room's never what you might call used. Next minute, he received a shock. Alfred, said Bundle, you've got to find me a place in this room where I can hide. Alfred looked at her in dismay. But it's impossible, milady. You'll get me in trouble and I'll lose my job. You'll lose it anyway when you go to prison, said Bundle unkindly. But as a matter of fact, you needn't worry. Nobody will ever know anything about it. And there ain't no place, wailed Alfred. Look round for yourself, your ladyship. If you don't believe me. Bundle was forced to admit that there was something in this argument, but she had the true spirit of one undertaking adventures. Nonsense, she said with determination. There has got to be a place. But there ain't one, wailed Alfred. Never had a room shown itself more unpropitious for concealment. Dingy blinds were drawn down over the dirty window panes, and there were no curtains. The window sill outside, which Bundle examined, was about 4 inches wide. Inside the room there were the table, the chairs, and the cupboards. The second cupboard had a key in the lock. Bundle went across and pulled it open. Inside were shelves covered with an odd assortment of glasses and crockery. Surplus stuff as we don't use, explained Alfred. You can see for yourself, milady. There's no place here as a cat could hide. But Bundle was examining the shelves. Flimsy work, she said. Now then, Alfred, you have got a cupboard downstairs where you could shove all this glass. You have. Good. Then get a tray and start to carry it down at once. Hurry. There's no time to lose. You can't, my lady, and it's getting late, too. The cooks will be here any minute. Mr. Moscow, what not doesn't come till later, I suppose. He never here much before midnight. But, oh, my lady, don't talk so much, Alfred, said Bundle. Get that tray. If you stay here arguing, we will get in trouble. Doing what is familiarly known as wringing his hands, Alfred departed. Presently he returned with a tray, and having by now realized that his protests were useless, he worked with a nervous energy quite surprising. As Bundle had seen, the shelves were easily detachable. She took them down, arranged them upright against the wall, and then stepped in. She remarked. Pretty narrow. It's going to be a tight fit. Shut the door on me carefully, Alfred. That's right. Yes, it can be done. Now, I want a gimlet. A gimlet, milady? That's what I said. I don't know. Nonsense. You must have a gimlet. Perhaps you've got an auger as well. If you haven't got what I want, you'll have to go out and buy it, so you'd better try to find it right. Try hard to find the right thing right now. Alfred departed and returned presently with quite a credible assortment of tools. Bundle seized what she wanted and proceeded swiftly and efficiently to bore a small hole at the level of her eye. She did this from the outside so that it should be less noticeable, and she dared not to make it too large lest she should attract attention. There, that'll do, she remarked at last. But, milady. Yes? But they'll find you if they should open the door. They won't open the door, said Bundle, because you're going to lock it and take the key away. And if by chance Mr. Magrovsky should ask for the key, tell him it's lost, said Bundle briskly. But nobody's going to worry about this cupboard. It's only here to attract attention from the other one and make a pair. Go on, Alfred. Someone might come at any time. Lock me in and take the key, and come and let me out when everyone's gone. You'll be taken bad, milady. You'll faint. I never faint, said Bundle. But you might as well get me a cocktail. I shall certainly need it. Then lock the door in the room, too. And don't forget to take all the door keys back to their proper doors. And, Alfred, don't be too much of a rabbit. Remember, if anything goes wrong, I'll see you through. And that's that, said Bundle to herself when, having served the cocktail, Alfred had finally departed. She was not nervous lest Alfred's nerves should fail and he should give her away. She knew that his sense of self-preservation was far too strong for that. His training alone helped him to conceal private emotions beneath the mask of a well-trained servant. Only one thing worried Bundle, the interpretation she had chosen to put upon the cleaning of the room that morning might be all wrong, and if so, Bundle sighed in the narrow confines of the cupboard. The prospect of spending long hours in it for nothing was not attractive. Chapter 14. The Meeting of the Seven Dials. It would be as well to pass over the sufferings of the next 4 hours as quickly as possible. Bundle found her position extremely cramped. She had judged that the meeting, if the meeting was to be, would take place at the time when the club was in full swing, somewhere probably between the hours of midnight and 2 a.m. She was just deciding that it must be at least 6 o'clock in the morning when a welcome sound came to her ears, the sound of the unlocking of the door. In another minute the electric light was switched on. The hum of the voices, which had come to her for a minute or two rather like the far-off roar of sea waves, ceased as suddenly as it had begun, and Bundle heard the sound of the bolt being shot. Clearly, someone had come in from the gaming room next door, and she paid tribute to the thoroughness with which the communicating door had been rendered soundproof. In another minute, the intruder came to her into her line of vision, a line of vision that was necessarily somewhat incomplete, but which yet answered its purpose. A tall man, broad-shouldered and powerful-looking, with a long black beard. Bundle remembered having seen him sitting at one of the baccarat tables on the preceding night. This, then, was Alfred's mysterious Russian gentleman, the proprietor of the club, the sinister Mr. Magrovsky. Bundle's heart beat faster with excitement. So little did she resemble her father that at this minute she fairly glorified the extreme discomfort of her position. The Russian remained for some minutes standing by the table, stroking his beard. Then he drew a match from his pocket and glanced at the time. Nodding his head, as though satisfied, he again thrust his hand into the pocket, and, pulling out something that Bundle could not see, he moved out of her line of sight. When he reappeared again, she could hardly help giving a gasp of surprise. His face was now covered by a mask, but hardly a mask in a conventional sense. It was not shaped to the face. It was a mere piece of material hanging in front of his features, like a curtain in which two slits were pierced for eyes. In a shape it was round, and on its representation of a clock, with hands pointing to 6 o'clock. "The 7 dials," said Bundle to herself, and at that minute there came a new sound, 7 muffled taps. Magrovsky strode across where Bundle knew was the other cupboard door. She heard a sharp click and then the sound of greetings in a foreign tongue. Presently she had a view of the newcomers. They also wore clock masks, but in their case the hands were in a different position, 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock respectively. Both men were in evening dress, but with a difference. One was an elegant, slender young man wearing evening clothes of exquisite cut. The grace with which he moved was foreign rather than English. The other man could be better described as a wiry and lean person. His clothes fitted him sufficiently well, but no more, and Bundle guessed at his nationality even before she heard his voice. "I reckon we're the first to arrive at this little meeting." A full, pleasant voice, with a slight American drawl, and an inflection of Irish behind it. The elegant young man said in good, but slightly stilted English, "I had much difficulty in getting away tonight. These things do not always arrange themselves fortunately. I am not, like number 4 here, my own master." Bundle tried to guess at his nationality. Until he spoke, she had thought he might be French, but the accent was not a French one. He might possibly be, she thought, an Austrian or a Hungarian, or even a Russian. The American moved to the other side of the table, and Bundle heard a chair being pulled out. "1 o'clock's being a great success," he said. "I congratulate you on taking the risk." 5 o'clock shrugged his shoulders. "Unless one takes risks," he left the sentence unfinished. Again 7 taps sounded, and Mr. Magrovsky moved across the secret door. She failed to catch anything definite for some moments, since the whole company were out of sight, but presently she heard the bearded Russian's voice appraised. "Shall we begin proceedings?" He himself came round the table and took a seat next to the armchair at the top. Sitting thus, he was directly facing Bundle's cupboard. The elegant 5 o'clock took his place next to him. The third chair that was at the side was out of Bundle's vision, but the American, number 4, moved into her line of sight for a moment or two before he sat down. On the near side of the table, also, only 2 chairs were visible, and as she watched, a hand turned the second, really the middle chair down, and then went with a swift movement. One of the newcomers brushed past the cupboard and took the chair opposite Magrovsky, whoever sat there had, of course, their back directly to Bundle, and it was that back that Bundle was staring at with a good deal of interest, for it was the back of a singularly beautiful woman, very much décolletée. It was she who spoke first. Her voice was musical, foreign, with a deep, seductive note in it. She was glancing toward the empty chair at the head of the table. "So we are not to see number 7 tonight," she said. "Tell me, my friends, shall we ever see him?" "That's darn good," said the American. "Darn good. As for 7 o'clock, I'm beginning to believe there's no such person." "I should not advise you to think that, my friend," said the Russian pleasantly. There was a silence, rather an uncomfortable silence, Bundle felt. She was still staring as though fascinated at the beautiful back in front of her. There was a tiny black mole just above the right shoulder blade that enhanced the whiteness of her skin. Bundle felt that at the last term, beautiful adventures, so often read, had a real meaning for her. She was quite certain that this woman had a beautiful face, a dark Slavonic face with passionate eyes. She was recalled from her imaginings by the voice of the Russian, who seemed to act as master of ceremonies. "Shall we get on with our business? First to our absent comrade, number 2. He made a curious gesture with his hand towards the turned down chair next to the woman, which every one present imitated, turning to the chair as they did so. "I wish number 2 were with us tonight," he continued. "There are many things to be done. Unsuspected difficulties have arisen. Have you had his report?" It was the American who spoke. "As yet, I have nothing from him." There was a pause. "I can understand it." "You think it may have gone astray?" "That is a possibility. In other words," said 5 o'clock softly, "there is danger." He spoke the word delicately and yet with relish. The Russian nodded emphatically. "Yes, there's danger. Too much is getting known about us, about this place. I know of several people who suspect." He added coldly, "They must be silenced." Bundle felt a little cold shiver pass down her spine. If she were to be found, would she be silenced? She was recalled suddenly to the attention by a word. "So nothing has come to light about Chimneys?" Mogrovsky shook his head. "Nothing." Suddenly, number 5 leaned forward. "I agree with Anna. Where is our president, number 7? He who called us into being. Why do we never see him?" "Number 7," said the Russian, "has his own ways of working." "So you always say." "I will say more," said Mr. Mogrovsky. "I pity the man or woman who comes up against him." There was an awkward silence. "We must get on with our business," said Mogrovsky quietly. "Number 3, you have the plans of Wherin Abbey?" Bundle strained her ears. So far as she had never caught a glimpse of number 3, nor had she heard his voice. She heard it now and recognized it unmistakably, low, pleasant, indistinct, the voice of a well-bred Englishman. "I've got them here, sir." Some papers were shoved across the table. Everyone bent forward. Presently, Mogrovsky raised his head again. "And the list of guests, here." The Russian read them. "Sir Stanley Digby, Mr. Terence O'Rourke, Sir Oswald and Lady Coote, Mr. Bateman, Countess Anna Radetzky, Mrs. Makata, Mr. James Thesiger." He paused and then asked sharply, "Who is Mr. James Thesiger?" The American laughed. "I guess you needn't worry about him. The usual complete ass." The Russian continued reading. "Herr Eberhard and Mrs. Eversley. That completes the list." "Does it?" said Bundle silently. "What about that sweet girl, Lady Eileen Brent?" "Yes, there seems to be nothing to worry about there," said Mogrovsky. He looked across the table. "I suppose there's no doubt whatever about the value of Eberhard's invention." 3 o'clock made a laconic British reply. "None whatever." "Commercially, it should be worth millions," said the Russian. "And internationally, well, one knows only too well the greed of nations. Bundle had an idea that behind his mask was smiling unpleasantly. Yes, he went on, a gold mine, well worth a few lives, said number 5, cynically, and laughed. But you know what inventions are, said the American. Sometimes these darn things won't work. A man like Sir Oswald Coote will have made no mistake, said Borogofsky. Speaking as an aviator myself, said number 5, the thing is perfectly feasible. It has been discussed for years, but it needed the genius of Eberhard to bring it to fruition. Well, said Migrovsky, I don't think we need to discuss matters any further. You have all seen the plans. I do not think our original scheme can be bettered. By the way, I hear something about the letter of Gerald Wade's that has been found, a letter that mentions this organization. Who found it? Lord Caterman's daughter, Lady Eileen Brent. Bauer should have been on to that, said Migrovsky. It was careless of him. Who was the letter written to? His sister, I believe, said number 3. Unfortunate, said Mr. Migrovsky, but it cannot be helped. The inquest on Ronald Devereux is tomorrow. I suppose that has been arranged for? Reports as to local lads having been practicing with rifles have been spread everywhere, said the American. That should be all right, then. I think there is nothing further to be said. I think we must congratulate our dear 1 o'clock and wish her luck in the part she has to play. Hurrah! Cried number 5 to Anna. All hands flew out in the same gesture, which Bundle had noticed before. To Anna, 1 o'clock acknowledged the salutation with a typically foreign gesture. Then he rose, or she rose, to her feet, and others followed suit. For the first time, Bundle caught a glimpse of number 3 as he came to put Anna's cloak round her tall, heavily built man. Then the party filed out through a secret door. Migrovsky secured it after them. He waited a few moments, and then Bundle heard him unbolt the other door and pass through it. After extinguishing the electric light, it was not until 2 hours later that a white and anxious Alfred came to release Bundle. She almost fell into his arms as he had to hold her up. Nothing, said Bundle. Just stiff, that's all. Here, let me sit down. Oh, Gord, my lady, it's been awful. Nonsense, said Bundle. It all went off splendidly. Don't get the wind up. Now, it's all over. It might have gone wrong, but thank goodness it didn't. Thank goodness, as you say, m'lady. I've been in a twitter all evening. They're a funny crowd, you know. A damn funny crowd, said Bundle, vigorously massaging her arms and legs. As a matter of fact, they're the sort of crowd I always imagined until tonight only existed in books. In this life, Alfred, one never stops learning. Chapter 15. The Inquest. Bundle reached home around 6 a.m. She was up and dressed by 9:30 and rang up Jimmy Thesiger on the telephone. The promptitude of his reply somewhat surprised her, till he explained that he was going down to attend the inquest. So I am, said Bundle, and I've got a lot to tell you. Well, I suppose you'll let me drive you down and we can all talk about it on the way. How about that? All right, but allow a bit of extra because you'll have to take me to Chimneys. The chief constable's picking me up there. Why? Because he's a kind man, said Bundle. So am I, said Jimmy very kindly. Oh, you are. You're an ass, said Bundle. I heard somebody say so last night. Who? To be strictly accurate, a Russian Jew. No, it was, but an indignant protest drowned her out. I may be an ass, said Jimmy. I dare say I am, but I won't have a Russian Jew saying so. What were you doing there last night, Bundle? That's what I was going to talk about, said Bundle. Goodbye for the moment. She rang off in a tantalizing manner, which left Jimmy pleasantly puzzled. He had the highest respect for Bundle's capabilities, though there was not the slightest trace of sentiment in his feelings toward her. She's been up to something, he opined, as he took his last hasty drink of coffee. Depend upon it, She's been up to something. 20 minutes later, his little two-seater drove up before Brook Street house, and Bundle, who had been waiting, came tripping down the steps. Jimmy had not ordinarily an observant man, but he this time noticed that there were black rings around Bundle's eyes, and that she had all the appearance of having had a late night the night before. "Now then," he said, as the car began to nose its way through the suburbs, "what dark deeds have you been up to?" "I'll tell you," said Bundle, "but don't interrupt until I've finished." It was a somewhat long story, and Jimmy had all he could to keep sufficient attention on the car to prevent an accident. When Bundle had finished, he sighed, then looked at her searchingly. "Bundle?" "Yes." "Look here, you're not pulling my leg." "What do you mean?" "I'm sorry," apologized Jimmy, "but it seems to me, though I'd heard it all before, in a dream, you know." "I know," said Bundle sympathetically. "It's impossible," said Jimmy, following out on his own train of thought. "The beautiful foreign adventuress, the international gang, the mysterious number 7, whose identity nobody knows. I've read it all 100 times in books." "Of course you have. So have I. But it's no reason why it shouldn't really happen." "I suppose not," admitted Jimmy. "After all, I suppose fiction is founded on the truth. I mean, unless things did happen, people couldn't think of them." "There is something in what you say," agreed Jimmy. "But all the same, I can't help pinching myself to see if I'm awake." "That's how I felt." Jimmy gave a deep sigh. "Well, I suppose we are awake. Let me see. A Russian, an American, an Englishman, a possible Austrian or Hungarian, and a lady who may be any nationality, for choice Russian or Polish. That's pretty good representative of a gathering." "And a German," said Bundle. "You've forgotten the German." "Oh," said Jimmy slowly. "You think—" "The absent number 2 is Bauer, our footman. That seems to be quite clear to me, from what they said about expecting a report, which hadn't come in, though what they can report on at Chimneys I cannot think." "It must be something to do with Jerry Wade's death," said Jimmy. "There's something there we haven't fathomed yet. You say they actually mentioned Bauer by name?" Bundle nodded. "They blamed him for not having found the letter." "Well, I don't see what you could have clearer than that. There's no going against it. You'll have to forgive my first incredulity, Bundle, but, you know, it was rather a tall story." "You say they knew about my going down to the Wyvern Abbey next week?" "Yes, that's when the American, it was him, not the Russian, said they needn't worry about you. You were only the usual kind of ass." "Ah," said Jimmy. He pressed his foot down on the accelerator viciously, and the car shot forward. "I am very glad you told me that. It gives me what you might call a personal interest in the case." He was silent for a minute or two, and then said, "Did you say that German inventor's name was Eberhard?" "Why, yes. Wait a minute. Something's coming back to me. Eberhard, yes. I'm sure that was the name. Tell me." "Eberhard was a Johnny who had got some patent process he applied to steel. I can't put the thing properly because I haven't got the scientific knowledge, but I know the result was that it came to be so toughened that a wire was strong as steel bar, and it was as strong as a steel bar had previously been. Eberhard had to do aeroplanes, and his idea was that the weight would be so enormously reduced that flying would be practically revolutionized by the cost of it. I mean, I believe he offered his invention to the German government, and they turned it down, pointed out that some undeniable flaw in it, but they did it rather nastily. He set to work and circumvented the difficulty, whatever it was, but he'd been offered by their attitude and swore they shouldn't have his ewe lamb. I always thought the whole thing was probably bunkum, but now it looks differently." "That is," said Bundle eagerly, "you must be right, Jimmy. Eberhard must have offered his invention to our government. They've been taking, or going to take, Sir Oswald Coote's expert opinion on it. There's going to be an unofficial conference at the Abbey. Sir Oswald, George, the Air Minister, and Eberhard. Eberhard will have the plans of the process, or whatever you call it. Formula, suggested Jimmy. I think formula is a good word for it. He'll have the formula with him, and the Seven Dials are out to steal the formula. I remember the Russians saying it was worth millions. I suppose it would be, said Jimmy, and well worth a few lives. That's what the other man said. Well, it seems to have been, said Jimmy, his face clouding over. Look at this damn inquest today, Bundle. Are you sure Ronnie said nothing else? No, said Bundle. Just that, 7 dials. Tell Jimmy Thesiger. That's all he could get out, poor lad. I wish we knew what he knew, said Jimmy. But we found out one thing. I take it that the footman, Bauer, must almost certainly have been responsible for Jerry's death. You know, Bundle? Yes. Well, I'm a bit worried sometimes. Who's going to be the next one? It really isn't the sort of business for a girl to be mixed up in. Bundle smiled in spite of herself. It occurred to her that it had taken Jimmy a long time to put her in the same category as Lorraine Wade. It is far more likely to be you than me, she remarked cheerfully. Hear, hear, said Jimmy. But what about the few casualties on the other side? For a change, I'm feeling rather bloodthirsty this morning. Tell me, Bundle, would you recognize any of these people if you saw them? Bundle hesitated. I think I should recognize number 5. She hesitated at last. He's got a queer way of speaking, a kind of venomous, lisping way. That I think I would know again. What about the Englishman? Bundle shook her head. I saw him the least, only a glimpse, and he's got a very ordinary voice, except that he's a big, tall man. There's nothing much to go by. There's a woman, of course, continued Jimmy. She ought to be easier. But then, you're not likely to run across her. She's probably putting in dirty work, being taken out to dinner by amorous cabinet ministers and getting state access to, or state secrets out of them when they've had a couple. At least, that's how it's done in the books. As a matter of fact, the only cabinet minister I know who drinks is in hot water with a dash of a lemon in it. Take George Lomax, for instance. Can you imagine him being amorous with a beautiful foreign woman? Said Bundle with a laugh. Jimmy agreed with her criticism. And now, about the man of mystery number 7, went on Jimmy. You've no idea who he is? None whatever. Again, by the standard book. That is, he ought to be someone we all know. What about George Lomax himself? Bundle reluctantly shook her head. In a book it would be perfect, she agreed, but knowing Cotters, and she gave herself up to a sudden uncontrollable mirth. Cotters, the great criminal organizer, she gasped. Wouldn't it be marvelous? Jimmy agreed that it would be. Their discussion had taken some time, and his driving had slowed down involuntarily once or twice. They arrived at Chimneys to find Colonel Melrose already there in the waiting room. Jimmy was introduced to him, and they all 3 proceeded to the inquest together. A Colonel Melrose had predicted the whole affair, and it was very simple. Bundle gave her evidence, the doctor gave his. Evidence was given to rifle practice in the neighborhood. A verdict of death by misadventure was brought in. After the proceedings were over, Colonel Melrose volunteered to drive Bundle back to Chimneys, and Jimmy Thesiger returned to London. For all his light-hearted manner, Bundle's story had impressed him most profoundly. He set his lips closely together. Ronnie's old boy, he murmured. I'm going to be up against it, and you're not here to join in the game. Another thought flashed through his mind. Lorraine, was she in danger? After a minute or two of hesitation, he went over to the telephone and rang her up. It's me, Jimmy. I thought you'd like to know the result of the inquest. Death by misadventure. Oh, but... Yes, but I think there's something behind that. The coroner had had a hint. Someone's at work to hush it up, I say, Lorraine. Yes. Look here, there's some funny business going about. You'll be very careful, won't you, for my sake? He heard the quick note of an alarm that sprang into her voice. Jimmy! But then it's dangerous for you. He laughed. Oh, but that's all right. I'm the cat that had 9 lives. Bye-bye, old thing. He rang off and remained a minute or two lost in thought. Then he summoned Stevens. Do you think you could go down and buy me a pistol, Stevens? A pistol, sir. True to his retraining, Sebastian betrayed no hint of surprise. What kind of pistol would you be requiring? Oh, the kind you put in your finger and turn the trigger. The thing goes off and the shooting until you take it off again. An automatic, sir? That's it, Jimmy said. An automatic. And I should like it to be a blue-nosed one. If you and the shopman know what it is, in American stories, the hero always takes his blue-nosed automatic from his hip pocket. Stevens permitted himself a faint, discreet smile. Most American gentlemen that I have known, sir, carry something very different in their pockets, he observed. Jimmy Thesiger laughed. Okay, my friends, that is all for this evening. I hope you're enjoying the story. We will continue tomorrow night. This has been Indiana Homes. Love to you all, and good night.
Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.